I've got Kansas finishing at the bottom this year. I think Lance Leipold has done an incredible job. I think with their scholarship numbers back on the rebound, they're going to make a run here shortly. They're on the right path to a great program again. I think, obviously beating Texas last year was a huge deal. So I have them finishing last, and then I've got Tech next. Carl, what do you think about Texas Tech?
Well, I like Tech with the energy that Coach McGuire is bringing to the program. He's a Texas guy through and through. I'm excited with the staff that he's hired, especially the offensive coordinator. They still have not decided on who the quarterback is going to be. A couple interesting guys on the roster. And so with a new coach and a new staff, I'll be interested to see what Texas Tech does, and we'll kind of have to wait and see. Blake, you got TCU number 8. What can you tell us about the TCU football program?
Yeah, I think TCU's on a different path than they've been under Gary Patterson with Sonny Dykes taking over. They're going to run more of a spread offense, kind of a run and shoot type offense. They've hired a Tulsa defensive coordinator to run their defense, or run more of a robber defense. They've got some nice pieces. I know Coach Dykes had told me earlier this spring how excited they were about their offensive line. Quarterback will be an issue. Will Chandler Morris take over? Not sure about that, but I think with Hodges Thomason on defense and Quentin Johnson on offense, they've got some nice pieces. So we'll see how they do, but I think they're probably a year away from really making some noise in the Big 12. I've got Iowa State up next. What do you think about them this season, Carl?
I think consistently that Iowa State is the toughest team to always gauge in the Big 12, because they don't get a lot of big-time recruits. But Matt Campbell has really sold that program on having a 5-star culture. They lost their big running back in Brees Hall, but their staff has pretty much stayed continuity. You got a great defensive coordinator in John Heacock, and who has given those RPO offenses fits with the Iowa State personnel that they have. So they don't have top-tier personnel, but Matt Campbell, who's also really been at the top of a lot of other programs' wish list for coaching, it would not be surprised if over the course of the season we see the toughness of Iowa State and the culture of his program push them up into the higher rankings of the Big 12 as we get deeper into the season.
Yeah, I agree.
We get off Iowa State, and now you're going into West Virginia as your next pick.
Yeah, West Virginia will be an interesting team this year with JT Daniels taking over at quarterback. I really hope he can stay healthy this year and maximize his skill set. He's an incredible quarterback that can make every throw on the field when he's healthy. His biggest problem is just missing a lot of games over the course of his career. But they've got most of their offensive line back. They've got some nice weapons at receiver. I think offensively they have a chance to be really good. Defense, I have some issues, not some issues with, but some questions about. It'll be interesting to see how their defense is this year. They've got some good home games this year. They're always tough to beat in Morgantown, so that'll be an interesting team to watch. I think they might have some upsets alerts in West Virginia this year. I've got Oklahoma State next. I think Mike Gundy does as much with as little talent as anybody in the country. He's their leading running back and receiver from last season, but he will find someone somewhere. He's got Spencer Sanders back, which feels like his 10th season in Stillwater. And, he's an experienced quarterback. That's a solid player. They're going to be solid on offense, run their outside zone scheme. They lose Jim Knowles to Ohio State defensively. They've got some monsters on their defensive line, and Colin Oliver and Tyler Lacey. So they'll miss Malcolm Rodriguez as kind of a linebacker safety hybrid guy, but I'm curious to see what their back end looks like in Stillwater this year, but they're going to be tough to beat. I've got Kansas State next. I think Chris Kleiman does an incredible job with the talent that he's got in Manhattan. I think Kansas State is a sleeper team this year with Adrian Martinez at quarterback, Deuce Vaughn. They've got Felix Azuma, who's one of the best players in the country on defense, and they've got a complete team this season So I think Kansas State is a team to really keep an eye out this year, and they've got they've got an interesting squad back this year. So I'll be curious what that team looks like. They've got a tough schedule, so that's something to keep an eye on as well. I've got Oklahoma next. I've got Oklahoma as my third team in the Big 12. I think Oklahoma is going to be a really explosive team on offense this year. They've got Dylan Gabriel, who's one of the better quarterbacks in the country, throw an incredible deep ball. They're going to run RPO tempo offense. They've got Marvin Mims, Drake Stoops back at wide receiver. Bill Beanball does a great job on the offensive line. So the real question I have is their defense. And with Brent Venables there, you know that they're going to figure something out, but I'm not sure. They got to stay healthy this year on their back end, especially. But I'm really excited about the future of Oklahoma because I think Brent Venables is going to be one of the best coaches in the country defensively, like he has been for the last 10 years or so.
Oklahoma right now with Venables and Oklahoma, it's a lot of excitement around the program, especially with them bringing Venables back in terms of him being a guy that was there for in the heyday. They do have some questions defensively. They added C.J. Colden, a transfer from the University of Wyoming in the secondary, and so that'll give them some depth and another really talented guy to put back there. The key for Oklahoma, whether they can compete for another Big 12 championship, will be how fast that they can gel the players in the new coaching staff and overcoming some of the losses that they had.
Yeah, they definitely have the talent to compete for the Big 12 this year, and they're a team that could easily win it. I've got Texas next. I think Texas offensively is going to be really explosive. They've got some dynamic wide receivers on their team. Xavier Worthy is one of the best in the country. They've got Quinn Ewers at quarterback this season. Of course, Bijan Robinson, who is an all-around stud. So their big question mark on offense for them is their offensive line. How many young guys are they going to play? I think they'll probably play a lot this year. And then their defense has to get better across the board. Every level on defense has to improve. They got to do a better job of putting these guys in great positions to succeed. And I expect them to step up this year, and they'll be better than they were last year. I've got,
every year it seems like it's Texas's year. We consistently talking about Texas. Everybody down there wants them to do a great job, but to me, it's just been a long time since they were the team to beat in the Big 12. And I know they added some key recruits and they got some guys coming back, but they're just going to have to show me on the field before I can buy into Texas.
Yeah, I hear you on that. I've been cautious to pick them too high. That's why I've got Baylor as my favorite to win the Big 12. They're the champs from last season. To beat the best, to be the best, you got to beat the best. And I think, with Blake Sharpen at quarterback this year, I think their offense is going to look a lot different. He's a huge upgrade at quarterback, in my opinion. Can throw the ball very well. I think Baylor does a great job with their outside zone run game and Jeff Grimes. And I think, they're going to be offensively really good this year. Defensively, Dave Aranda is, he's one of the best in the country. Very cerebral coach, understands defense. They've got a really good defensive line that can plug and really stuff the run. Their linebacking group, I think, is a really solid unit. Their secondary, I have some concerns with just because of experience. But Dave Aranda, again, I think he's got a great opportunity to have a big year. Their schedule is brutal. I mean, they got to go on the road and play their some of the toughest games of the season on the road. So that could be a big hurdle for them. But I'll take Baylor right now until somebody else proves me different.
I think that Dave Aranda was, to me, the surprise of the offseason was that he stayed at Baylor. He has a great program. He's a defensive-minded guy, and he has Baylor playing really tough in a league that has typically been more softer with passing and spread offenses. And Dave Aranda brought a really tough-minded brand of football to Baylor. And I do think Baylor's got a really good team this year. But like you mentioned, their schedule could provide a real challenge, and they could get tripped up along the way. So I don't know if Baylor is necessarily my favorite to win the Big 12 this season.
So, Carl, I want to ask you as you bring that up, if you're not picking Baylor to win the Big 12 and you're not necessarily buying stock in Texas either, who is your Big 12 champion in 2022?
Well, Colin, I think that this is Kansas State's year to win the Big 12. This will be their first time at the top of the league since the 2012 season. The number one reason I think it's their year is Chris Kleiman is a winner, and he's provided a great culture. Kansas State is a tough-minded, physical run team. They have about 40 to 50 variations of the power run. And so you got to be a real football guy to understand the power O offense. But you return a tailback in Deuce Vaughn, who I think can be upwards of 2,500 to potentially 3,000 all-purpose yards this season. We've talked a lot on this show about Felix Uzoma, but they also do return Khalid Duke on defense, who missed the majority of last season. I think that Kansas State right now, with Oklahoma being a little down, with Texas not arriving yet, I think that this is an opportunity for Chris Kleiman's team to really stamp their identity the same way that he stamped it up at North Dakota State. This is the year that the Kansas State Wildcats win the Big 12. And with Oklahoma and Texas leaving for the SEC, do not be surprised if Kansas State consistently becomes the major player in this conference.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see what the Wildcats do, because guess who led the Big 12 in all preseason selections? It wasn't Oklahoma or Texas or Baylor or Oklahoma State. The Wildcats with the most players named to the preseason all Big 12 media team. Going to be interesting to see what Chris Kleiman can do this upcoming season.